What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. We're going to be reviewing the NXT UK shows from the 21st of November. It was another 2-hour episode, filmed from Birmingham, probably back in August now, so a couple of months behind from when it was actually filmed. Before I get into that, it was a big weekend of wrestling just gone. You probably heard my review of NXT TakeOver War Games. It was a great show, some really memorable matches. Survivor Series was also a thumbs up from me, especially the last two matches, Charlotte versus WWE Raw Women's Champion Ronda Rousey, which was it was an incredible match. Ronda took a lot of punishment. The crowd appeared to turn on Ronda Rousey. Charlotte showed a different side to her character. I know that we've seen Charlotte as a heel before, but she really turned up the aggressiveness and really seemed to be kind of demonstrating this really angry side of her. Which wasn't enough to beat Ronda Rousey on the night. I'm sure we'll see more from them in the future, possibly at WrestleMania 35. The Daniel Bryan Brock Lesnar match, once again a different type of match to what we usually see from WWE, much like the Ronda and Charlotte match. We've seen a lot of Brock Lesnar matches where they've been German suplex, F5, F5, but this one went a bit longer. It was with a wrestler that wouldn't usually go up against Brock Lesnar much in the same way as when AJ Styles fought Brock Lesnar at the Survivor Series last year. It only went 10 minutes, but it was a fantastic match. I'm really enjoying Daniel Bryan's new heel persona. And Daniel Bryan he put in a challenge or two in the second half of the match. If there's just two matches you're going to watch from the Survivor Series, watch them two final matches. Two very unique, different matches to what the WWE would normally present. Overall, it made it a very enjoyable card. That, on top of the TakeOver show from the night before, meant it was a very enjoyable weekend of wrestling from the WWE. Anyway, going back to the NXT UK presentation, as I mentioned from last night's episode, another 2-hour show from NXT UK. So the show opens with a graphic of our main event for hour one, I'm presuming, from later on tonight, which will feature Ligero versus Jordan Devlin. Now that should be a great match, with both men currently undefeated in singles competition on the NXT UK brand. But first up, we see Xia Brookside versus Rhea Ripley. So this is a quarter-final match in the NXT UK Women's Championship title tournament match. So Xia enters first, looking amazing with her unicorn-coloured hair and an energetic entrance. However, Rhea Ripley looks menacing with her new no-nonsense attitude and demeanour. Rhea dominates Brookside with her strength and weight advantage in the early stages, demonstrating this with a wicked buckle bomb a la Seth Rollins in the early going. Ripley is slower and more methodical, hitting an impressive standing vertical suplex for the 2 count. This is followed by a drop kick to Brookside's head while Xia was on her knees in the centre of the ring. Then a move that I've not seen before up until this match, where Rhea Ripley managed to put Xia Brookside in a Texas cloverleaf. Now usually this would be done like a leg grapevine thing, maneuver similar to the sharpshooter or the scorpion deathlock, but this time the Texas cloverleaf was done with her arms, essentially meaning that her opponent Xia Brookside was almost dangling in midair, with Ripley holding Brookside aloft in this cloverleaf maneuver. So as I mentioned, Xia Brookside was dangling mid-air while being tied up in this move. Brookside does manage to make an escape from the hold, followed by a bulldog and a head scissors takedown on Ripley before hitting double knees to the corner. However, Brookside's offense came to an end after trying a top rope crossbody dive onto Ripley, only to be caught in mid-air, allowing Ripley to hit her riptide pump handle powerbomb finisher on Brookside for the pinfall win in impressive fashion. in just over 6 minutes. A valiant effort from Zybrok's side, but her pace couldn't outmaneuver Rhea Ripley's strength. Ripley is definitely a powerful, imposing figure and should be one of the favourites as we head into the semi-finals of the NXT UK Women's Title Tournament. Next, we see the grizzled young veterans backstage hyping up the up-and-coming tag team title tournament, which will be starting in the coming weeks. The grizzled young veterans have been a mainstay as a tag team on the British independent circuit for many years. Not only are James Drake and Zach Gibson accomplished singles competitors, as you've probably seen on the NXT UK brand so far, and across the Indies, but a very accomplished tag team on the Indies, in particular with Progress Wrestling being their former tag team champions. We then take a look at the closing stages to last week's match between Trent Seven and Zach Gibson, when the Coffee Brothers and Wolfgang attacked Seven and his Mustache Mountain tag team partner Tyler Bate in the ring. Then in a WWE.com exclusive, we see the heel trio attack Mustache Mountain once again backstage. Definitely a bit of a feud building between those two groups. Next, we see Eddie Dennis in his third NXT UK match, this time in a match against Jack Starr. Eddie Dennis is one of my favourite NXT UK talents at the moment. And shows everyone why in this squash match with Jack Starr hitting Starr with a huge forearm smash and a beautiful power slam for the 2 count in the very early stages of the match. Starr makes a brief comeback with a few uppercuts and a series of European uppercuts in the corner to Eddie Dennis, only for Dennis to duck an attempted big move from Starr, followed by Dennis's 7 bridge bomb and his finisher, the next stop driver for the 1-2-3 and the win. So another easy win there for Dennis, and with his slow, menacing, powerful style, he proves that he will be a contender for the NXT UK Championship at some point in the future. For those of you that watch Progress Wrestling, you'd know that Eddie Dennis is pushing his name at the top of the list for a future Progress Wrestling World Championship match at some point in the future. Next, we see Tyson T-Bone and Dave Mastiff get into a scuffle backstage after last week's show, and it's advertised that both Mastiff and T-Bone will face off in next week's show. Remember that for the last few weeks there's been a second hour of NXT UK each Wednesday, so next week is likely to be this week, but in the second hour. We'll talk more about that in a mo. Mark Andrews versus the Wild Boar Mike Hitchman is next. We've seen Andrews wrestle many times in NXT, the UK Championship tournaments from 2017 and 2018, 205 Live, and more recently here on NXT UK TV. But we're less familiar with Mike Hitchman. We did see him in a match against Ligero a few weeks back. The match starts at a very fast pace with Andrews missing an attempted moonsault on the outside, allowing Wild Boar to hit a back senton onto Andrews on the ring apron. Wild Boar is able to get Andrews back into the ring to hit a second senton, this time for a 2 count. Wild Boar is a unique wrestler, has a unique wrestling style with a mixture of power and pace, with a very low centre of gravity, but Andrews is clever enough to hit a stun dog millionaire on Hitchman, followed by his patented shooting star press for the win, and another unfortunate loss for the Wild Boar Mike Hitchman. However, I like Hitchman's style. He looks a little like the Tasmanian Devil, and as I mentioned, he has a very low centre of gravity, a very unique wrestling style, and should be a more prominent player in the future, in my opinion, on NXT UK. Next, we see Eddie Dennis in a backstage interview saying that he has waited 10 years for this opportunity before being interrupted by Ashton Smith. Now we see these two have got into confrontations in backstage segments before, which Dennis takes exception to on this occasion, setting up their feud and a match in the coming weeks. Next, we see a quarter-final match in the NXT UK Women's Championship title tournament between Toni Storm and Isla Dawn. Having just reviewed a match between Isla Dawn and Millie McKenzie from the Pumpkin Spice Progress Wrestling show from October, I can say that Dawn is an excellent wrestler and should be a strong competition for Toni Storm in this match. Dawn, as you remember, also wrestled in this year's Mae Young Classic. However, she is up against the eventual winner of the whole thing, Toni Storm. Dawn starts the match with a big drop kick into the corner, taking Storm by surprise. Dawn gets an early 2 count after a pair of knees to the shoulders into a pin-in combination. Isla Dawn is dominating this match so far with plenty of punches, kicks and a double foot stomp for another 2 count. Dawn hits a vicious pump kick to the face of Toni Storm before transitioning into the rings of Saturn in the middle of the ring. This is an impressive move, but Storm is still able to inch her way to the bottom rope to break the hold. Storm fires back with a series of kicks and a hip attack in the corner before hitting one of her patented release German suplexes. Storm finishes Isla Dawn off with her Storm Zero Tiger Driver for the pinfall victory, with Storm going through to the semi-finals where she would go up against long-time rival Jenny. In the other semi-final, we will see Dakota Kai versus Rhea Ripley. These matches will take place next week, or as we will see very soon in hour 2. Next, we have our main events between Ligero and Jordan Devlin. I've praised Jordan Devlin over recent weeks for his newly found aggression and hard hitting style. Devlin can wrestle and he can also fly when needed. This should be a great match between two very experienced, exciting and capable wrestlers. Ligero gets the early advantage with his pace, taking Devlin by surprise for an early 2 counts. A head scissors and a leg lariat from Ligero gets another 2 counts. However, Devlin is able to recover, hitting a side slam moonsault combination for a 2 count of his own. Devlin was the OTT World Champion for almost a year, only to lose the title to current Progress and OTT World Champion Walter earlier this year. Ligero was able to counter an attempted tilt-a-whirl backbreaker from Devlin into a crossbody block for another 2 counts. This main event was going at electric pace as Ligero hits the move of the night so far, which was a code red for another 2 counts. Devlin is able to avoid a corner charge from Ligero to hit a stunning backdrop driver for a close fall. Ligero takes to the sky with Devlin on the outside with an impressive head scissors takedown before climbing to the top rope, only to be caught with a pair of knees from an attempted diving splash, allowing Devlin to hit another 2 counts. This match is red hot, with both men trading blows in the centre of the ring before Devlin hits an outstanding Spanish fly on Ligero, but once again only for another 2 counts. The match continues with Ligero hitting Devlin with a suplex from the top turnbuckle, followed by another splash. This time it hits its mark. On the outside, both men stand on the steel steps, allowing Devlin to drop his opponent Ligero face first onto the cold hard steel, then hitting a moonsault onto Ligero on the outside before rolling Ligero back into the ring. Devlin is able to hit his impressive finisher in the centre of the ring for the eventual pinfall victory, and that closes the first hour of NXT UK. Jordan Devlin is another top-class heel that has been nothing less than impressive since the inception of NXT UK and continues his undefeated streak as he gets one step closer to a UK Championship match with Pete Dunne. This was an excellent first hour of NXT UK with a red-hot crowd and 3 very good matches, and another squash from Eddie Dennis, who continues to look strong. However, when will we see Dennis in the ring with someone a little tougher, some tougher competition for Eddie Dennis? Ashton Smith? Maybe. We will have to wait and see. Hour 2 starts with the same red-hot fans we've had for the last 2 weeks, filmed in Birmingham. We take a look at the brackets for the NXT UK Women's Title Tournament, where Dakota Kai will be up against Rhea Ripley, with Toni Storm versus Ginny in the second of the 2 semi-finals, both matches taking place this evening. Dakota Kai versus Rhea Ripley in the first semi-final match for the NXT UK Women's title. Dakota enters the ring first, and as you may remember, she, along with Io Shirai, came to the aid of Kairi Sane at last Saturday's NXT TakeOver War Games match versus Shayna Baszler. Here she goes up against one of the most improved wrestlers in the last 12 months, Rhea Ripley. Ripley was, of course, a semi-finalist in this year's Mae Young Classic, where she eventually went out to Io Shirai. The commentary team mentions that Dakota beat Ripley in the first ever Mae Young Classic last year, not this year. However, this match should be a lot more competitive. Both wrestlers start the match with a test of strength with Ripley, which Ripley wins with ease, as you would imagine. Some good back and forth action with Ripley getting a little frustrated as Kai uses her pace and kicks to her advantage. A double stomp from Kai to get a 2 count. Kai hits 2 sweet kicks to the chest of Ripley, like soccer style kicks, which also leads to a 2 count. Ripley tosses Dakota high into the air with a huge military press / throw type move. Ripley is vicious as she pummels Kai to the canvas with shoulder barges into the corner. Ripley hits an impressive drop kick, followed by her ever impressive Texas cloverleaf type maneuver, which she uses with her arms instead of her legs, as I mentioned earlier, leaving her victim dangling in midair, allowing Ripley to have greater leverage over her opponent. Kai manages to reach the bottom rope to escape. Kai makes a comeback with a series of punches and kicks, including her face wash big boot into the corner, but only getting a 2 count. Lots of really good action here, but Rhea Ripley hits Kai with a face first slam on the ring apron on the outside, and after a brief comeback from Dakota, the more powerful Rhea Ripley is able to hit her Riptide pump handle finisher to finish off Dakota Kai, advancing to the finals of the tournament where she will face either Jenny or Toni Storm. We will see that match later on tonight. Then we get to see Sid Scala backstage talking to NXT UK General Manager Johnny Saint, where it's revealed that Scala has been given an opportunity from the GM to go up against Joe Coffey in next week's episode of NXT UK. I hope he doesn't live to regret that decision. Next, we see a backstage interview with Jordan Devlin. Devlin said that last time we saw him, he didn't just beat Ligero, he brutalised Ligero, and he managed to cement his place as the number 1 contender for Pete Dunne's UK title. Pete Dunne has defended his title for over 450 days, and when he wins, meaning when Jordan Devlin wins the UK Championship, there's going to be some changes around here, and the first thing he is going to do when he is the champion is to get the brand renamed to NXT Ireland, featuring the UK. Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews goes up against Joseph Connors and Saxton Huxley in the next match. With this match was okay and lasted for just less than 10 minutes. The best sequence of the match was when Flash Morgan Webster got tagged in, hitting a stunning high knee to Connors, then a wicked rude boy block on Huxley before drilling Connors with a charging senton off the ring apron onto Connors on the outside. Webster attempted a flying crossbody, only to be caught by Huxley in the middle of the ring before dumping Webster to the canvas. The end came when Saxton Huxley chose not to tag in his tag team partner, giving Webster enough time to tag in Andrews. Webster dumped Saxton to the floor with his Eaton rifle, allowing Andrews to hit his shooting star press for the win. After the match, Connors re-enters the ring to lay in a vicious attack on his tag team partner Saxton Huxley. The crowd chants, "You're a sinner," and Judas to Connors as he hits his finisher on Huxley before exiting the ring. Connors has stepped up his heel game here after turning his back on his tag team partner for not tagging him in when their team were in control of the match. Look out for a match between Saxton Huxley and Joseph Connors in a future episode, I'm sure. The Bomber Dave Mastiff versus Tyson T-Bone. This has been built up over the last couple of episodes of NXT UK. This should be a huge hoss fight between two big men. Mastiff enters first to a good ovation from the fans, all 322 pounds of him. And Mastiff has not lost a match so far in NXT UK. T-Bone gets the early advantage of the match with several stiff strikes, getting the bigger Mastiff down to the mat. Mastiff takes control by landing a sit-down splash on T-Bone, followed by a huge high crossbody, demonstrating Mastiff's not only strength and power, but his agility as well as a very big guy. Mastiff hits a headbutt, elbow strikes, and a huge release German suplex, and a running cannonball senton in the corner before covering T-Bone for the 1, 2, 3 and the win. I was expecting this match to go much longer. The match only lasted for about 5 minutes, but it was the right result having Mastiff go over with a dominant win to end this match. Then we see a tweet on screen from NXT UK General Manager Johnny Saint saying how Jordan will be getting his wish with an NXT UK Championship match between himself and the Bruiserweight Pete Dunne on next week's episode of NXT UK. Now the final match of our 2-hour stint here, and the main event of this particular hour, Toni Storm versus Jinny in the second semi-final of the NXT UK Women's Championship title tournament. That's a bit of a mouthful, where the winner will go up against Rhea Ripley. The current Progress Women's Champion Jinny enters first to a chorus of boos. The commentary team mentions how Jinny beat Toni Storm to become the Progress Women's Champion when Storm held the title for 1 day shy of a whole year as champion. There's a slow build to the match with headlocks from Storm controlling the pace of the match in the first 2 minutes. Storm strikes with an impressive running boot for the close near fall. Storm positions Jinny in an STF with full force, and as I mentioned, the STFs that we've seen on NXT UK will put John Cena's STFs to shame. As some of you may already be aware, Toni Storm has just become the WXW Women's Champion in Germany earlier on this week, on top of winning the Mae Young Classic at Evolution in October. This has been a couple of very successful months for Storm, but Jinny is not letting any of this affect her concentration as she starts to dominate Storm with some strikes and an armbar. After an exchange of blows from both women, Storm hits a headbutt that floors them both to the canvas. Storm hits a massive release German suplex into the corner, followed by a hip attack and a fisherman suplex for the 2 counts. Storm gets caught on the top rope with a kick from Jinny, allowing Jinny to hit an impressive facebuster while Storm was sitting on the top turnbuckle, and that move looked like it hurt. It also gained a very near fall as well. Jinny hit Storm with an axe kick, but Storm managed to break the count by hooking the bottom rope. Storm gets a second wind to hit an impressive snap German suplex, followed by her Storm Zero Tiger Driver for the win. That was a very enjoyable match, going 10 minutes and non-stop action throughout between these two very, very good female wrestlers that know each other very well and gave everything in that match. If I were to rate this match, I'd give it a solid 3.25 stars out of 5. Had it gone a bit longer, it could have got 4 or maybe a little bit more, but a very, very good match. Thoroughly enjoyed it. The pace of the match was good. Started off slow, ended with a lot of pace, and some really good moves between these two wrestlers. Johnny Saint congratulated Toni Storm at the top of the rank before being confronted by Rhea Ripley ahead of their tournament final match in 2 weeks' time. This was the end of the second hour of this week's NXT UK, and overall was a very good 2-hour show. This main event between Jinny and Toni Storm was a great match and could have gone longer in my opinion. I also enjoyed Jordan Devlin versus Ligero from hour 1 and the battle of the big men between Dave Mastiff and Tyson T-Bone. Definitely a good couple of hours of wrestling action again from this brand. If I was to be a little bit critical of the matches on NXT UK, I would say that many of them are a little too short, and if they were given a little more time, then I believe that it would allow for more storytelling to be told in the ring. A common criticism of mine from WWE product as a whole at the moment, and this was evident at NXT TakeOver this past Saturday, with many of the matches showing big spots after big spots, and no real selling between the big moves. That's my opinion. Many of these matches in this NXT brand start off slow with a test of strength or a couple of headlocks before pace picks up. However, within a couple of minutes, all these matches get to breakneck speed before you know it. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love this show, NXT UK. But they can remove 1 or 2 of the spots and add some more psychology to bring in a bit more storytelling into these matches. Also, many of the backstage segments are very short, with many of them following a very similar format, with the good guy being interviewed before the bad guy comes in to interrupt, before challenging said good guy to a match. All of the in-ring promos and challenges have been very good so far from the talent in NXT UK. However, there are still some room for improvement with the backstage stuff, in my opinion. I do also like what they're doing by building many of the characters with the video packages that they've shown, such as the videos they did to help introduce Ginny or Eddie Dennis before they made their debuts. It helps to make them feel special before they're introduced in person, especially to an audience who might not be familiar with many of these wrestlers from the indies. I also love the squash matches that they're doing on NXT UK. As mentioned before, this was also always something that I was fond of from the early 90s when they would introduce incoming talent. I have fond memories of video packages with Razor Ramon, Crush, Ted DiBiase, etc. So this is a big positive in my books. No review of this week's NXT from Full Sail. It was mostly a rundown of what happened at TakeOver War Games on Saturday, and you can listen to a full review of my of NXT TakeOver War Games recorded last week. So catch that in the archives. So that's all from this week's episode of Wrestling with Johners. I hope you enjoyed it. Later this week I'll be doing a full rundown of Progress Wrestling's latest chapter, Chapter 78, entitled 24-Hour Progress People, including a Progress World Championship match between Walter, the champion, versus challenger Mark Haskins, which should be another hard-hitting, stiff match. You can listen to all previous episodes of Wrestling with Johners on all major podcast platforms, including my YouTube channel. You can check out my review of Progress Wrestling's Chapter 77 and my review for NXT TakeOver War Games in the archives, as I've just mentioned. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Wrestling with Johners, and if you have any questions about the show or have anything for our mailbag, simply email wrestlingwithjohners@gmail.com. You can give us your feedback about the show. Just simply get in touch. It'd be great to hear from some of the listeners. You can also get in touch via our Twitter page at withjohners_WWJ. Or as I mentioned, we do have a YouTube page. Just simply search Johners Wrestling. I'll be back next week for another episode of Wrestling with Johners, talking everything good about NXT UK, NXT, and everything else in between. So that's all. Take care and see you all soon.